much is a business worth? There are a lot of ways to get at that. And I'm going to kind of zip through this because this is what keeps business schools in business. So you have EBITDA, discounted cash flow, comparable companies or transactions. That's kind of like an appraisal on a house. Asset accumulation method, acquisition, debt value. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And the challenge is each of those methods produces a different valuation. Does anybody know what this is?
Earnings before income taxes.
No fair handy.
EBITDA.
Short.
This is the most common method that is used in transactions of small private companies, and even pretty substantial ones as well. But we're going to focus on EBITDA. Is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And it's basically a proxy for cash flow. How much cash can a business produce? It doesn't matter how much debt you have, how much interest you pay, it doesn't matter what your tax rate is. How much can the core business throw off in cash? And so the way you translate EBITDA into a value is a multiplier is assigned. And we'll come back to that. But it's basically if you have EBITDA, there's a multiplier, which is kind of a market-driven force. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But when you hear multiple, that's what it refers to. Dollar. Can you buy much with $1 these days? No. But what if you could turn $1 into $6? EBITDA, how much cash your business throws off, drives the value. That's how they might assign a different value to that cash, but that's what drives it. So for example, if you could increase your EBITDA by $100,000 and you're selling at a 6-time multiplier, that's $600,000 in your pocket. 500 becomes 3 million. $1 million becomes 6 million. It's a multiplier. So this increase in EBITDA is super, super valuable when it comes time to sell your company. Why would an owner lower their EBITDA intentionally? Taxes, exactly. Taxes take a big bite. If you're owning a company and operating it, you want to pay as few taxes as you can. And so owners will look to load more expense in than in order to lower their taxes. Here's an example of it. Let's say a company has a pre-tax income of $2 million and they're able to, with the use of their tax advisor, advice of their tax advisor, run additional expense that may not be directly related to the performance of the core business. So that would lower pre-tax income and pick up a tax savings in a high-tax state like Connecticut between federal and state of almost 50%. So that $500,000 of expense reduces tax by $240. So there's a good reason for doing that. And so if we look in valuation in that same kind of framework, the 2 million EBITDA will get you 12. But that $500,000 of additional expense, if it stays in the business, will cost you $3 million in valuation, okay? And that's not a good thing, says the emoji. This would be a catch-22, right? In the end, you can't have it both ways. So, what do we do about it? So, I don't know, probably a common transaction we all have in common is selling a house. What do you do when you get ready to sell a house? Stage it. Upgrades. You dress it up.
Market valuation.
You do a market valuation.
Oh, I thought I was sure that was the answer.
But there's a lot of things you do. You put on a red roof. You do things to get it ready. The same is true for getting your company ready to sell. And as Andy said, the more time you have before you go to market, the fresher that business is going to look and the higher the valuation is going to be. So let's say we had a company that in its current mom and pop shape with all kinds of folks on the payroll and different expenses going through the business, it's producing $795,000 of EBITDA. That would be worth a hair under $4 million. If we were able to add $405,000 of EBITDA, that would increase the value by over $2 million. So that little bit of work ahead of time has a huge payoff to the owner of this business. So there's a six-step process to do this. You start with the EBITDA, then you add back expenses that a new owner wouldn't necessarily incur, and I'll run through some examples of those. Which type of buyer is best for you? So as we saw in the first part, the different methodologies of valuation can cause a huge range of value for a business, from, in that example, 2 million to 20 million. I mean, there is a range. And as with valuation methods, the type of buyer also is very important in determining that multiplier. So, who are the buyers? They're outsiders, insiders, and the public. We're not going to talk about public. That would be an IPO or going public. It's really not, it's less relevant for companies in our size. So who are outsiders, potential outsiders? Strategic buyers, financial buyers, private equity groups. It could be a combination. That our sale was a combination of a private equity and a strategic. Insiders could be family, could be management, could be employees. And public could be an IPO, but we're not going to talk about that. To your point, each of these categories of buyers will look at the multiplier different. And it depends industry by industry. In a hot industry like tech, you will have a higher multiplier. In a old school industry like newspapers, you're going to have a lower multiplier. So there's an industry component and then a type of buyer component, and that's what we're going to focus on more. So this, as with valuations, there's a range in what people will pay. A strategic buyer, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute, will pay the most. And an ESOP, which is an employee buyout, would likely pay the least. And these others are somewhere in between. And again, there's an industry effect on this as well. So what did we learn today? What was the number one concern about selling your business? Valuation. Which type of buyer is best for you? It depends. And how do you get through the inevitable surprises along the way? So that's what I have.
Well,
All right.